A single 8-second video, posted to the royal family's official Instagram account, has done what even Buckingham Palace press officers sometimes struggle to achieve. It yanked Duchess Sophie, the quietly industrious wife of the Duke of Edinburgh, into the brightest spotlight she has occupied since King Charles presented her new title last spring. Why did a clip of satin, shoes and rehearsal mirrors travel so far, so fast? Because in the vacuum created by the Princess of Wales's medically advised retreat from public life, every gesture from the remaining senior royals now carries double weight. And this one arrived with a hum of reassurance the palace was eager for the world to hear. The Central School of Ballet sits just south of London's River, a converted red brick granary, whose corridors echo with ply counts and piano scales. There, rows of perspiring students perfect the same port de bras that once propelled alumna Jenna Lee to English national ballet stardom. The school is world-class, yet it does not receive the subsidies lavished on the Royal Ballet School. Its survival has always depended on patrons who open doors, attract donors, and turn tiny grant meetings into headline events. Sophie stepped into that role in the first months of her marriage, back when journalists still called her the PR girl who won a prince. Over 20 years later, her name adorns the building's largest rehearsal suite, the Countess of Wessex Studios, christened long before she became Duchess of Edinburgh. Among faculty, the shorthand remains, "We'll warm up in Sophie's." It is a tribute to longevity, not celebrity. She attends board reviews, signs appeal letters, and has even been known to slip a check under the principal's door when a sponsor pulled out at the last minute. So when she arrived this week in a simple dove grey midi dress, there was no ceremonial fanfare, only the hush of anticipation that comes when a familiar figure re-enters a space she helped build. Cameras captured her leaning against the studio piano, watching Pas de Deux rehearsals for the summer tour. She spoke softly with a first-year student whose pointe shoes had frayed ribbons, then crossed the corridor to examine tutus freshly steamed for Swan Lake excerpts. Her questions are always practical. How much does that bodice weigh? How long before the sequins cut the net? One wardrobe mistress laughed afterward. It's respect disguised as curiosity. Catherine's pause, and the vacuum it created. Cliffhanger. 6 months ago, these scenes would have been overshadowed by coverage of Princess Catherine's wardrobe, her way from the palace portico, her effortless ability to make every click of a camera look like the first photograph of the day. Now, with the future queen deep in a chemotherapy regimen she describes as a marathon, not a sprint, court circulations are recalibrating at speed. Who steps forward? Who holds the fort? And how long before the public begins to whisper that someone, anyone, must fill the Catherine-sized gap on the balcony? Aides insist the Princess of Wales remains engaged, behind the scenes, approving early childhood research grants via encrypted video call, and recording short audio messages for her patronages. But there will be no walkabouts, no Ascot photo line, no pastel coat Easter strolls until doctors give the all-clear. Royal calendars typically lock 18 months in advance. Every withdrawal triggers a domino fall of rescheduling, and every rescheduling risks a headline about dwindling working royals. That pressure explains why Sophie's ballet visit flashed across the palace feed within hours. The public, the message said, is not being neglected, the Crown's promises still stand. The numbers behind Sophie's workload. Since January, the Duchess of Edinburgh has chalked up 53 solo engagements, a 27% increase over the same period last year. They have ranged from inspecting the Coldstream Guards barracks at Windsor, she is their honorary colonel, to opening a sensory garden for visually impaired children in Leeds. She flies economy when schedules allow, carries her own umbrella, and once stitched a button back on her coat in a staff corridor minutes before meeting the President of Malawi. Yet volume alone does not tell the whole tale. Palace strategists argue Sophie offers a different temperature to Catherine's glamour or Anne's bulldozing efficiency. Where the Princess Royal can stride through an agricultural show in jodhpurs barely slowing for cameras, Sophie pauses, listens, and often leaves organizers in tears of relief that someone really understood. It is retail compassion, exactly the quality the monarchy needs while its global superstar recuperates. The central school visit, small moments, lasting impact. During her tour, Sophie watched an apprentice class attempt a fiendish petit pas variation, then called out, "Beautiful arms, control the landing, gorgeous." Later, over peppermint tea in the canteen, she asked scholarship dancers from Greece and Nigeria how London rent hikes were impacting their nutrition plans. A trustee told us, "She absorbs the grim budget spreadsheets. Then she walks into a studio and reminds everyone why we fight for the money in the first place." Before departing, she unveiled a modest plaque marking 21 years of her patronage. No speeches, no velvet curtain, just a quick pull of a ribbon and applause drowned by the slam of tube trains in the tunnel below. Yet the clip of that moment, on-point performances, the Instagram caption read, "Racked up over 2 million views in 48 hours, outperforming several recent posts about state visits and investitures." Why Buckingham needed this story now. Second hook. Some courtiers whisper that the palace comms team timed Sophie's video as a counterweight to rising gossip about Catherine's prolonged absence and the Sussex's latest podcast tease. Whether coincidence or choreography, the ballet footage achieved three strategic aims. It reminded the public that other royals carry deep, decades-long ties to the charitable sector. It showcased continuity. The studio named when Sophie was merely a countess now receives the attention of a duchess, underscoring the monarchy's long game. It emphasized hopeful imagery, young dancers leaping, classical music soaring, at a moment when the House of Windsor has been overshadowed by illness and inter-family recriminations. One senior aide put it bluntly off record, "The country loves Catherine, but Catherine needs peace. Our task is to show that the machine still hums without her flashbulbs." A brief history of royal ballet patronage. Ballet entered court life under King George II, whose German musicians imported continental dance forms to London. Queen Victoria championed company tours at Covent Garden, while her daughter-in-law Alexandra funded the Royal Academy of Dancing in the early 1900s. By the time Elizabeth II became patron of the Royal Ballet School, classical dance was knitted into national identity. Sophie, then, walks in century-old footsteps, but she does so with a modern twist. Her patronage has funneled corporate grants into bursaries for teens who would never afford pointe shoes, broadening the pipeline beyond finishing school budgets. Where does this leave the court circular? Catherine will remain off the public roster until at least early autumn unless her doctors approve a high-impact, short-duration event, such as trooping the colour fly past, or a balcony appearance for V-Day commemorations. Queen Camilla continues to shoulder headline duties alongside the king, focusing on literacy and osteoporosis campaigns. Prince Edward, often overlooked, has quietly upped his engagements to nearly match Princess Anne's marathon pace this quarter. Duchess Sophie is now the unofficial face of empathy, popping up at art schools, rehabilitation centers, and regional hospitals where cameras can record human interest vignettes free of constitutional controversy. Behind the scenes, palace schedulers are penciling Sophie into segments traditionally reserved for Catherine, the Wimbledon Royal Box, the opening night of the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition, possibly even representing the family at this year's Earthshot Awards if Catherine cannot travel. Each tentative slot carries an asterisk. Subject to change, subject to Catherine's health, subject to 1,000 unseen pressures. The next 90 seconds cliffhanger. How long can Sophie hold this bridgehead before the tabloids begin weighing her outfits against Catherine's or, worse, speculating about rivalry? Her friends insist she loathes fashion wars and prefers being dowdy in denim. Yet as cameras multiply, the comparison game may be impossible to dodge. Will she lean in, update the wardrobe, and risk headlines of "Sophie steps into Kate stilettos"? Or will she remain steadfastly self-effacing? That decision could shape how the public views the monarchy's female bench for years. Final takeaway. A future queen recuperates offstage. A seasoned duchess steps forward holding ballet slippers and a reassuring smile. One video cannot fill the void left by Catherine's absence, but it can remind a sometimes restless public that every curtain call requires an ensemble, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, just proved she can carry a scene with poise. If you want front row insight when the next cast list is shuffled, tap subscribe. Until then, watch the comments on that 8-second clip. You may catch a glimpse of how Buckingham Palace rewrites its choreography in real time.